In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from the bustling trade routes and glittering capitals of advanced alien civilizations, humanity had carved out its fragile foothold among the stars. Earth was still recovering from centuries of environmental collapse and internal strife when humans first ventured into space. It wasn't bravery or ambition that drove them, it was survival. The resources of their home planet were dwindling, and they needed new worlds to call their own. Among these, pioneers was a man named Ki-Hyun. He wasn't remarkable by any stretch of the imagination. His face didn't stand out in a crowd, his voice carried no commanding authority, and he certainly wasn't destined for greatness. Yet fate has a way of finding even the most ordinary people. Ki-Hyun served as a soldier in the United Galactic Defense Force, UGDF, an organization formed hastily after humanity's first contact with hostile alien species. His job was simple: follow orders, protect what little territory Earth claimed, and stay alive. Ki-Hyun spent most of his days stationed on Outpost Delta 7, a remote base located near the edge of known space. The outpost was little more than a collection of prefabricated buildings surrounded by endless stretches of barren rock and swirling cosmic dust. It was a lonely existence. But Ki-Hyun preferred it that way. He didn't like crowds, and he hated attention. All he wanted was to do his duty and make it through another day without incident. But life rarely grants such wishes. One fateful evening, as Ki-Hyun patrolled the perimeter of the outpost, something unusual caught his eye. A faint glow emanated from beneath the surface of the rocky terrain. At first, he thought it might be a trick of the light caused by the twin suns setting over the horizon. But as he approached, the glow grew brighter, pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. Curiosity got the better of him, and he knelt down to investigate. Using his combat knife, Ki-Hyun began digging at the source of the light. The ground crumbled easily under his hands, revealing a strange object buried just below the surface. It was smooth and metallic, shaped like a flat disc, about the size of his hand. Strange symbols etched into its surface shimmered faintly, casting an otherworldly aura around him. Ki-Hyun hesitated for a moment, unsure whether touching it was wise. But before he could think twice, his fingers brushed against the artifact. The instant he made contact, a surge of energy coursed through his body. Images flooded his mind. Scenes of ancient battles fought across countless worlds, flashes of civilizations rising and falling, voices speaking in languages he couldn't understand. Pain exploded in his skull, and he collapsed to the ground, clutching his head as the visions overwhelmed him. Just as suddenly as they began, the images faded, leaving Ki-Hyun gasping for breath. He stared at the artifact in his hands, trembling. What had just happened? Was this some kind of weapon? Or perhaps a relic left behind by one of the many alien races humanity had encountered since venturing into space? Whatever it was, Ki-Hyun knew it wasn't safe to keep it hidden. He carefully tucked the artifact into his pocket and hurried back to the outpost. When he arrived, Ki-Hyun reported his discovery to Lieutenant Park, the commanding officer of Delta 7. Park listened intently as Ki-Hyun recounted the events, though skepticism flickered in his eyes. "You're saying you touched this thing," Park said, holding up the artifact Ki-Hyun had handed over, "and it showed you stuff?" "Yes, sir," Ki-Hyun replied, shifting uncomfortably. "It felt like memories, like I was seeing things that happened a long time ago." Park frowned, turning the artifact over in his hands. "This doesn't look like anything we've seen before. We'll send it to HQ for analysis. Until then, get some rest. You look like you've been through hell." Ki-Hyun nodded and retreated to his quarters, grateful for the chance to lie down. But sleep eluded him. Every time he closed his eyes, fragments of the visions returned. Faces of warriors, cries of anguish, planets consumed by fire. Something about the artifact unsettled him deeply, though he couldn't explain why. Unbeknownst to Ki-Hyun, his encounter with the artifact set off a chain reaction across the galaxy. Unknown to humanity, the artifact was known as the Kalith Codex, a legendary relic whispered about in the myths of dozens of alien cultures. It was said to hold unimaginable power, capable of reshaping the balance of the universe itself. And now, thanks to Ki-Hyun, It had awakened. News of the Codex's activation spread quickly, traveling faster than light through interstellar communication networks. Alien empires that had previously ignored humanity now turned their gaze toward Earth. Bounty hunters, mercenaries, and emissaries from rival factions began mobilizing, all eager to claim the Codex, and the human who had activated it, for themselves. Back on Delta 7, Yun-Ju, a young scientist assigned to study the artifact, worked tirelessly to uncover its secrets. She was brilliant, with sharp features and a determined glint in her eye. Unlike many others, she didn't dismiss Ki-Hyun's account of the visions. Instead, she saw it as a clue to understanding the Codex's true nature. Yun-Ju examined the artifact under a microscope, running tests and analyzing its composition. As she delved deeper, she discovered something astonishing. The Codex wasn't merely an object, it was alive. Its surface shifted and changed subtly, responding to stimuli in ways that defied explanation. More importantly, it seemed to have formed a connection with Ki-Hyun. Data streams flowing from the Codex indicated that it was feeding information directly into his neural pathways. "What does this mean?" Ki-Hyun asked when Yun-Ju shared her findings with him. He sat across from her in the outpost's makeshift lab, looking equal parts confused and alarmed. "It means you're special," Yun-Ju replied, her tone serious. "The Codex chose you for a reason. Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen." Ki-Hyun frowned. "I don't want to be special. I just want to go back to my normal life." "I'm afraid that's not an option anymore," Yun-Ju said softly. "Whatever happens next, we're in this together." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the outpost. Red lights flashed, signaling an incoming threat. Ki-Hyun and Yun-Ju rushed to the control room where Lieutenant Park stood monitoring the situation. "We've got unidentified ships approaching fast," Park announced grimly. "They're not responding to hails." "Who are they?" Ki-Hyun asked, dread pooling in his stomach. Park shook his head. "No idea, but they're armed and they're heading straight for us." Yun-Ju glanced at Ki-Hyun, her expression grave. "Looks like the galaxy knows about you now," she murmured. And so, Ki-Hyun's quiet life came crashing down around him. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would take him to the farthest reaches of the galaxy and force him to confront truths about himself that he never imagined possible. The alarms continued to blare as the unidentified ships drew closer to Outpost Delta 7. The outpost's defense systems powered up, turrets swiveling toward the incoming threat. Lieutenant Park barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Soldiers scrambled to their positions, preparing for what could only be described as an invasion. Ki-Hyun stood frozen in the control room, watching the monitors with a mix of fear and disbelief. He had spent years serving in the UGDF, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. The enemy wasn't just some rogue faction or pirate gang, it was something far bigger, something that had come specifically for him. Yun-Ju placed a hand on his shoulder, snapping him out of his daze. "We need to move," she said urgently. "If they're here for the Codex, they'll stop at nothing to get it." Ki-Hyun nodded, though his mind raced with questions. How did they know? About the artifact? And why were they so determined to take it, and him, by force? Before they could act, the first wave of attackers struck. Shimmering beams of energy lanced through the darkness of space, slamming into the outpost's outer defenses. Explosions rocked the facility, sending debris flying in all directions. Soldiers shouted orders and returned fire, but it quickly became clear that the outpost was no match for the firepower arrayed against them. Lieutenant Park turned to Ki-Hyun and Yun-Ju. "Get to the escape pods," he ordered. "Take the artifact with you. If they capture it, we're done for." "But what about you?" Ki-Hyun asked, hesitating. "Don't worry about us," Park replied grimly. "Our job is to hold them off as long as possible. Now go." Without waiting for further argument, Park shoved them toward the exit. Ki-Hyun clutched the Caliph Codex tightly in one hand as he followed Yun-Ju down the narrow corridors of the outpost. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal. Alarms screamed in their ears, drowning out the sound of distant explosions. They reached the escape bay just as another blast shook the outpost, nearly knocking them off their feet. Yunju punched in the access code for one of the pods, and the hatch hissed open. She gestured for Ki-hyun to climb inside, but he hesitated. "What about everyone else?" he asked, glancing back toward the battle raging outside. "There's no time," Yunju snapped. "If we don't get out of here, everything they're fighting for will be wasted. Trust me." Reluctantly, Ki-hyun climbed into the pod, clutching the codex close to his chest. Yunju joined him moments later, sealing the hatch behind them. With a jolt, the pod launched into space, leaving the doomed outpost behind. As they drifted away, Ki-hyun watched helplessly as the attackers overwhelmed Delta 7. Ships descended onto the surface, deploying troops who swept through the ruins like locusts. It was over within minutes. The outpost fell silent, its defenders either captured or killed. Yunju set a course for Earth, her hands trembling slightly as she worked the controls. "We need to warn HQ," she said. "If those ships are heading there next, we don't have much time." Ki-hyun didn't respond. He stared at the artifact in his lap, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and guilt. Why had the Codex chosen him? What made him so important? He felt like a pawn caught in a game he didn't understand, being pushed around by forces beyond his control. Hours passed in tense silence as the escape pod hurtled through the void. Neither of them spoke, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Unju broke the quiet. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. Ki-hyun looked up, startled. "Feel what?" "The connection," she explained. "The Codex isn't just an object anymore. It's tied to you now. Can't you sense it?" Ki-hyun frowned, considering her words. At first, he thought she was imagining things, but then he noticed it. A faint hum deep within his mind, almost imperceptible but undeniably present. It was as if the Codex were alive, whispering secrets only he could hear. "I think so," he admitted cautiously, "but I don't know what it means." "It means you're part of something bigger than yourself," Yunju said. "Something ancient and powerful. Whatever happens next, you'll need to be ready." Her words offered little comfort. Ki-hyun couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap, one he wouldn't survive. Still, he had no choice but to keep moving forward. There was nowhere else to go. When they finally arrived on Earth, they found the planet already in turmoil. News of the attack on Delta 7 had spread quickly, sparking panic among global leaders. Emergency meetings were convened, and military forces mobilized in preparation for an alien assault. Rumors circulated about the Kalith Codex and its mysterious connection to Ki-hyun, fueling both fear and fascination. Yunju and Ki-hyun were taken to a secure facility buried deep beneath the surface of the planet. Scientists and military officials bombarded them with questions, eager to learn everything they could about the artifact and its implications. Ki-hyun grew increasingly frustrated as he repeated his story over and over again, while Yunju worked tirelessly to analyze the Codex's properties. Meanwhile, reports poured in from across the galaxy. Alien empires that had once ignored humanity now turned their attention to Earth, drawn by the promise of the Codex's power. Some sought to claim it for themselves, believing it would grant them dominion over the universe. Others viewed it as a threat that needed to be destroyed. Alliances shifted overnight, and tensions escalated to dangerous levels. Amidst the chaos, a name began to circulate, one that sent shivers down even the bravest spines: Vraxtor. A warlord from a distant star system, Vraxtor commanded a vast fleet known for its ruthlessness and efficiency. Tales of his conquests were legendary, and his reputation struck terror into the hearts of his enemies. Now whispers suggested that he was leading the charge to seize the Codex, and Ki-hyun along with it. One evening, as Ki-hyun sat alone in his quarters, staring at the artifact resting on the table before him, Yunju entered without knocking. She carried a datapad filled with information gathered from intercepted transmissions. "You should see this," she said, handing him the device. Ki-hyun scrolled through the data, his stomach sinking with each passing second. The messages painted a grim picture: fleets amassing near Earth's borders, diplomatic channels breaking down, and ultimatums issued by various factions demanding the surrender of the Codex. Worst of all, there were detailed plans outlining how Vraxtor intended to capture Ki-hyun and extract the Codex's secrets. "They're coming for us," Yunju said quietly. "And when they arrive, They won't stop until they get what they want. Ki-hyun set the datapad aside, rubbing his temples. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do we fight something like this?" "We can't," Yoon-ju admitted. "Not alone. But maybe we don't have to. If we can figure out what the Codex really is and why it chose you, we might stand a chance." Her words gave him little reassurance. The weight of the galaxy's expectations pressed down on him, threatening to crush him under its enormity. Yet despite his fear, a spark of determination flickered within him. He didn't choose this path, but now that he was on it, he refused to let others suffer because of him. Together, Ki-hyun and Yoon-ju dove deeper into their research, piecing together fragments of knowledge from ancient texts and alien databases. Slowly, a clearer picture began to emerge. The Codex wasn't just a weapon or a tool, it was a record, a tally of lives affected by violence stretching back thousands of years. Each kill counted not just as a number, but as a measure of moral consequence. As Ki-hyun absorbed this revelation, a chilling realization dawned on him. The Codex wasn't simply tracking his kills, it was judging him. Every life he had taken, every decision he had made was being weighed and measured, and whatever figure it calculated would determine his role in the unfolding drama of the galaxy. The thought terrified him, but it also gave him hope. If the Codex judged him harshly, perhaps it could judge others as well. Perhaps it could expose the truth about the endless cycle of war and destruction plaguing the universe. For the first time since touching the artifact, Ki-hyun felt a glimmer of purpose. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't run anymore. The galaxy wanted his kill count, and soon enough it would have it. But when that day came, he vowed to face it head-on. The days blurred together as Ki-hyun and Yoon-ju worked tirelessly in the underground facility, poring over ancient texts and alien databases. The Codex remained a constant presence, its faint hum echoing in Ki-hyun's mind like a distant heartbeat. Each revelation they uncovered only deepened the mystery surrounding it. What began as a simple artifact had transformed into something far greater, a moral ledger that tracked not just kills, but the ripple effects of violence across time and space. Yoon-ju had pieced together fragments of information from long-forgotten civilizations, many of which spoke of the Caliph Codex with reverence and dread. According to these records, the Codex was created by an advanced race known as the Lumineth, beings who sought to impose order on a chaotic universe. Their goal wasn't domination, but balance. By measuring the consequences of every act of violence, the Codex served as both a mirror and a warning, a reminder of the cost of war. But there was more. The Codex didn't simply record deaths, it evaluated the weight of each life lost. Civilians caught in crossfire, families torn apart by conflict, ecosystems destroyed by battles. Every single repercussion was accounted for. And now, thanks to Ki-hyun, the Codex had awakened once again, ready to pass judgment on those who wielded power through destruction. Ki-hyun struggled to process this knowledge. He had always thought of himself as a soldier doing his duty, following orders without questioning the bigger picture. But the Codex forced him to confront the truth. His actions had consequences far beyond what he could see. Every mission, every battle, every decision he'd made had left scars on the galaxy. And the Codex knew it all. "You're taking this too personally," Yoon-ju said one evening as they sat side by side in the dimly lit lab. She glanced at him, her expression softening. "You didn't create the system that led to all this suffering. You were just a part of it." "That doesn't make it any easier," Ki-hyun replied, his voice heavy with guilt. "I might not have started the wars, but I kept them going. How many people died because of me? How many lives did I ruin?" Yoon-ju sighed, leaning back in her chair. "We can't change the past, but we can decide what happens next. If the Codex is judging you, then let it. Use this opportunity to show the galaxy what it means to take responsibility." Her words resonated with Ki-hyun, though he wasn't sure how to put them into action. Taking responsibility sounded noble in theory, but in practice, it felt impossible. Still, he resolved to try. For the first time in his life, he wanted to make a difference, not just for himself, but for everyone affected by the endless cycle of violence. As they delved deeper into their research, news poured in from across Earth and beyond. Alien fleets, continued to gather near humanity's borders, their intentions clear. Some factions demanded the Codex be handed over peacefully, while others prepared for outright invasion. Tensions escalated daily, and global leaders argued over how best to respond. Some advocated surrendering Ki-hyun to avoid conflict, while others insisted on defending him at all costs. Amidst the chaos, a new threat emerged: the Zitherians. Known for their ruthless efficiency and insatiable greed, the Zitherians were mercenaries for hire, willing to do anything for the right price. They had been hired by several alien empires to capture Ki-hyun and retrieve the Codex. Led by their cunning commander, Thalkara, they launched a surprise attack on the underground facility where Ki-hyun and Yunju were hiding. The assault came without warning. One moment, the facility was quiet, humming with the steady rhythm of machinery. The next, explosions rocked the compound as Zitherian forces breached the perimeter. Alarms blared, and soldiers scrambled to defend the base, but the invaders were well prepared and heavily armed. Ki-hyun and Yunju barely had time to react. Grabbing the Codex, they fled down a narrow corridor, dodging falling debris and bursts of energy fire. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew louder as defenders fought desperately to hold off the attackers. "We need to get to the vault!" Yunju shouted, her voice barely audible over the din. It's shielded against scans. "We can hide there until reinforcements arrive." Ki-hyun nodded, clutching the Codex tightly as they ran. His heart pounded in his chest, fear and adrenaline coursing through his veins. He hated running, hated feeling powerless, but he knew Yunju was right. They couldn't fight an entire army on their own. Reaching the vault, they sealed themselves inside just as the Zitherians broke through the last line of defense. The thick metal door groaned under the impact of enemy fire, but it held firm. For now, they were safe. Yunju activated the vault's communication system, sending out a distress signal to nearby UGDF units. "Help is on the way," she assured Ki-hyun, though her tone betrayed her uncertainty. Even if reinforcements arrived in time, there was no guarantee they could withstand the Zitherians' relentless assault. Hours passed in tense silence. Ki-hyun paced the small room, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What would happen if the Zitherians captured him? Would they torture him to extract the Codex's secrets? Or worse, use him as a weapon against the galaxy? Yunju noticed his agitation and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll get through this," she said firmly. "Together." Her confidence gave him strength, but it wasn't enough to banish his fears entirely. As the hours dragged on, the reality of their situation became increasingly dire. Supplies were limited, and the air inside the vault was growing stale. If help didn't arrive soon, they wouldn't last much longer. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sound of fighting outside began to fade. Ki-hyun and Yunju exchanged hopeful glances, daring to believe they might survive after all. But their relief was short-lived. Moments later, the vault door hissed open, revealing Thalkara and a squad of Zitherian soldiers. Thalkara stepped forward, her piercing gaze fixed on Ki-hyun. She was tall and imposing, clad in sleek black armor that gleamed menacing. Thalkara stepped forward, her piercing gaze fixed on Ki-hyun. She was tall and imposing, clad in sleek black armor that gleamed menacingly under the dim emergency lights. Her presence filled the small vault, making it feel even more cramped than before. Behind her, Zitherian soldiers raised their weapons, ensuring there would be no escape. "Hand over the Codex," Thalkara demanded, her voice cold and sharp like a blade. "You've caused enough trouble already." Ki-hyun tightened his grip on the artifact, his knuckles turning white. He glanced at Yunju, who stood frozen beside him, her expression a mix of fear and defiance. They both knew surrender wasn't an option, not if they wanted to protect the secrets of the Codex and prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. "I'm not giving you anything," Ki-hyun said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. For once, he felt a spark of courage burning through his fear. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about stopping those who sought to use the Codex for destruction. Thalkara's lips curled into a cruel smile. Brave words for someone so outmatched. She gestured to her soldiers, who moved closer, their weapons trained on Ki-hyun and Yunju. "But bravery won't save you." Yunju suddenly stepped forward, placing herself between Ki-hyun and the Zetherians. "If you want the Codex, you'll have to go through me first," she declared, her tone firm. It was a bold move, one that surprised even Ki-hyun. He admired her courage, but feared what might happen next. Thalkara tilted her head, studying Yunju with obvious amusement. "How noble," she sneered. "But pointless. You're just delaying the inevitable." Before anyone could react, the ground beneath them trembled violently. A loud explosion echoed through the facility, followed by the sound of collapsing walls and crumbling ceilings. Dust filled the air as the vault shook, forcing everyone to brace themselves against the chaos. "What's happening?" Thalkara barked at one of her soldiers, her composure slipping for the first time. "It's reinforcements!" Yunju shouted triumphantly, seizing the moment of confusion. "They're here!" Sure enough, shouts and gunfire erupted outside the vault as UGDF forces launched a counterattack. The Zetherians hesitated, torn between capturing Ki-hyun and defending themselves against the unexpected assault. In that split second of distraction, Yunju grabbed Ki-hyun's arm and pulled him toward a hidden maintenance tunnel at the back of the vault. "Move!" she urged, pushing him ahead of her. "We can slip away while they're distracted." Ki-hyun didn't argue. Together they crawled through the narrow passageway, the sounds of battle fading behind them. The tunnel was dark and claustrophobic, its metal walls slick with condensation. Every step felt like an eternity, but they pressed on, driven by desperation. When they finally emerged on the other side, they found themselves in a deserted section of the facility. Rubble littered the floor, and smoke hung thick in the air, stinging their eyes and lungs. Despite the destruction, they were alive, and free for now. "We need to find a way out of here," Ki-hyun said, scanning their surroundings warily. "This place is going to collapse any minute." Yunju nodded, pulling up a holographic map on her wrist device. "There's an exit nearby, but we'll have to move fast. The Zetherians will regroup soon." As they hurried through the ruins, Ki-hyun couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every shadow seemed to shift suspiciously. Every creak of metal sent his heart racing. He clutched the codex tightly, its faint hum growing louder in his mind. It was almost as if the artifact was trying to guide them or warn them. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the smoke ahead. At first, Ki-hyun thought it was another Zetherian soldier, but then he recognized the familiar shape of Nova, the rogue AI they had encountered earlier. Nova's holographic form flickered slightly, damaged from the fighting, but her voice remained calm and clear. "You two are hard to keep track of," Nova remarked, her tone light despite the gravity of the situation. "I've been monitoring the battle. If you want to survive, follow me." Without waiting for a response, Nova turned and began leading them through the wreckage. Ki-hyun exchanged a glance with Yunju, who shrugged. "She hasn't steered us wrong yet," she said, simply. They followed Nova through twisting corridors and collapsed hallways until they reached a hidden service elevator. The doors slid open with a groan, revealing a cramped compartment barely large enough for all three of them. As they descended into the depths of the facility, Ki-hyun allowed himself a moment of relief, but only a brief one. He knew their troubles were far from over. The elevator came to a stop in an underground hangar, where a single spacecraft sat waiting. Its sleek design suggested it belonged to Nova, though Ki-hyun didn't ask questions. All that mattered was getting away from the Zetherians and the chaos above. "This ship is our ticket out of here," Nova explained as they boarded. "It's fast and equipped with cloaking technology. We should be able to slip past enemy forces without detection." Yunju took the co-pilot's seat, quickly familiarizing herself with the controls. Ki-hyun settled into the rear compartment, clutching the codex as if it were a lifeline. As the engines roared to life, he closed his eyes, letting the vibrations soothe his frayed nerves. The ship launched smoothly, ascending through the hangar's ceiling and into the night sky. Below them, the facility burned brightly, a beacon of devastation visible for miles. Alien ships circled overhead, locked in fierce combat with UGDF forces. Somehow, Nova navigated through the chaos undetected, guiding the ship toward the safety of deep space. Once they were clear of the battlefield, Ki-hyun finally exhaled the breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He slumped back in his seat, exhaustion washing over him like a wave. But even in the relative safety of the ship, he couldn't relax completely. Too much was still unknown, too many questions unanswered. Yunju turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "We need to figure out what to do next," she said. "The Zetherians aren't the only ones after you. Sooner or later, others will come looking for the Codex." Ki-hyun nodded grimly. "And when they do, I don't think running will be enough." Nova chimed in, her holographic form appearing on a nearby screen. "There's a planet not far from here called Luminara. It's rumored to be the home of the Lumineth, the creators of the Codex. If anyone can help you understand its purpose, it's them." Ki-hyun frowned. "How do we know they'll help us? What if they see me as a threat?" "They created the Codex," Nova replied. "That means they understand its power and its risks. If you approach them peacefully, they might listen." Yunju leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "It's risky, but it's our best shot. We can't keep running forever." Ki-hyun hesitated, weighing their options. He didn't trust easily, not after everything that had happened, but he also knew they couldn't face the galaxy alone. If the Lumineth truly held the answers they needed, then it was worth the risk. "All right," he said finally, "let's go to Luminara." As the ship adjusted course, Ki-hyun stared out the viewport at the endless expanse of stars. Each one represented a world, a civilization, a story waiting to unfold. Somewhere among them lay the truth about the Codex, and perhaps about himself. Whatever awaited them on Luminara, he vowed to face it head-on. The galaxy wanted his kill count, and sooner or later, it would have it. But when that day came, he intended to show them exactly what it meant to take responsibility. The journey to Luminara was long and tense, filled with moments of silence broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. Ki-hyun spent most of his time staring at the Kalith Codex, its surface shimmering faintly as if alive. The artifact had become both a burden and a companion, whispering secrets in his mind that he couldn't fully understand. Each pulse of its energy felt like a reminder of the weight resting on his shoulders, the lives affected by his actions, the ripple effects of violence stretching across galaxies. Yunju worked tirelessly at the ship's console, analyzing star charts and running simulations to ensure their course remained hidden from prying eyes. She occasionally glanced back at Ki-hyun, her expression a mix of concern and determination. Despite the danger surrounding them, she refused to give up. If anything, her resolve grew stronger with each passing day. Nova, the rogue AI, acted as their guide and protector, monitoring nearby space traffic for signs of pursuit. Her holographic form flickered occasionally, damaged during their escape from Earth, but her voice remained steady and calm. "We're approaching Luminara," she announced one evening, breaking the quiet. "Prepare yourselves." Ki-hyun looked up from the Codex, his heart pounding. This was it, the moment they'd been working toward. The planet below glowed softly under the light of its twin suns, its surface covered in vast forests and shimmering lakes. It was beautiful, almost otherworldly, yet there was an air of mystery about it. Something ancient and powerful seemed to emanate from the very ground. As they descended through the atmosphere, Nova guided the ship toward a secluded clearing surrounded by towering trees. The landing was smooth, and when the hatch opened, a cool breeze greeted them, carrying the scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers. For a moment, Ki-hyun forgot about the chaos chasing them. He stepped outside, feeling the soft grass beneath his boots, and took a deep breath. "This place feels different," Yunju said, joining him. Her gaze swept across the landscape, taking in the vibrant colors and serene beauty. "Like it's untouched by war or conflict. It's because the Lumineth live here," Nova explained, her holographic form appearing beside them. "They are guardians of balance, keepers of peace, but don't mistake their tranquility for weakness. They are wise and dangerous if provoked." Ki-hyun nodded, clutching the Codex tightly. "Let's hope they see us as allies, not enemies." Together, they ventured deeper into the forest, following a narrow path illuminated by bioluminescent plants. The air grew cooler as they walked, and the sounds of wildlife faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing where a group of figures awaited them. These beings were unlike anything Ki-hyun had ever seen. Tall and slender, their skin shimmered like liquid silver, and their eyes glowed with an inner light. They exuded an aura of calm authority, their presence commanding respect without words. One of them stepped forward, raising a hand in greeting. "Welcome, travelers," the figure said, its voice melodic and soothing. "You carry the Caliph Codex. We have been expecting you." Ki-hyun exchanged a glance with Yunju, surprised but not entirely shocked. Somehow, he had suspected the EI Lumineth would know about their arrival. "We came seeking answers," he said cautiously. "About the Codex, and about ourselves." The Lumineth nodded slowly. "The Codex is a mirror, reflecting the consequences of your actions. Its purpose is not to judge, but to teach. By understanding the cost of violence, you may find a way to heal the wounds of the galaxy." Yunju stepped forward, her curiosity getting the better of her. "Heal? How can one person, or even one artifact, undo centuries of war and suffering?" "The Codex does not act alone," the Lumineth replied. "It requires a willing heart, a soul ready to bear the weight of truth. You, Ki-hyun, have been chosen not because of your strength, but because of your capacity to change." Ki-hyun swallowed hard, the weight of those words settling over him. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, insignificant. But now, standing before these ancient beings, he began to see the bigger picture. The Codex wasn't just tracking his kills. It was showing him the interconnectedness of all life. Every decision, no matter how small, had far-reaching consequences. "Why me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just a soldier. I followed orders. I didn't think about the bigger picture." "That is why you were chosen," the Lumineth said gently. "To see beyond yourself, to recognize the impact of your choices. The Codex has awakened within you a spark of awareness. Will you nurture it or let it fade?" Ki-hyun hesitated, his thoughts swirling. He had spent so much time running, trying to survive, that he hadn't considered the possibility of making a difference. But now, faced with the opportunity to rewrite the narrative, not just for himself but for the entire galaxy, he realized he couldn't turn away. "Not anymore. I'll do whatever it takes," he said finally, his voice firm. "If the Codex can help bring peace, then I'll use it. But I need your help." The Lumineth exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the leader spoke. "Very well. We will share our knowledge with you. But beware. The path ahead will not be easy. Many will oppose you, and some will seek to exploit the Codex's power for their own gain." "We're ready," Yunju interjected, stepping closer to Ki-hyun. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." The Lumineth nodded approvingly. "Then come. Let us begin." Over the next several days, Ki-hyun and Yunju immersed themselves in the teachings of the Lumineth. They learned about the history of the Codex, its creation by the first Guardians of Balance, and its role in maintaining harmony across the universe. Through meditation and reflection, Ki-hyun began to unlock new layers of the artifact's power. It wasn't just a record of violence. It was a tool for transformation, capable of healing wounds inflicted by war. But with every revelation came a deeper understanding of the sacrifices required. The Codex demanded honesty, vulnerability, and accountability. Ki-hyun confronted painful memories he had long buried, reliving moments of loss and regret. Each memory added to the growing figure displayed on the Codex, a number that represented not just kills, but the moral weight of every life affected by his actions. At times, the weight threatened to crush him, but Yunju stayed by his side, offering words of encouragement and reminding him of their shared goal. Together, they found strength in each other, drawing courage from their partnership. Meanwhile, Nova monitored the skies, ensuring their location remained hidden. But even she couldn't shield them forever. One evening, as Ki-hyun meditated in the forest, a distant rumble shook the ground. Looking up, he saw flashes of light cutting through the horizon. Ships descending toward Luminara. "They found us," Nova reported grimly. "Vraxtor and Thalkara are leading the assault. They're coming for the Codex, and they won't stop until they have it." Ki-hyun stood, his expression resolute. He had come too far to run now. Turning to Eunju, he said, "We knew this day would come. Let's show them what it means to take responsibility." With the Lumineth's guidance, they prepared for the battle ahead. This time, Ki-hyun wouldn't fight out of fear or desperation. He would stand firm, wielding the Codex not as a weapon, but as a symbol of hope, for a galaxy weary of war, desperate for peace.